Thank you so much for joining us here today. Would you please join me in giving a warm welcome to the Richard G. Engelsman Dean of Arts and Sciences, Feng-Sheng Hu, and our Vice Dean of Undergraduate Affairs, Aaron McLaughlin.
Good morning. Welcome parents, families, and loved ones of the class of 2028. It is wonderful to see all of you here on our beautiful campus on this gorgeous day as your students begin their journey at Washington University. I am Feng-Sheng Hu, Dean of Arts and Sciences. I'm also a professor in the Department of Biology and in the Department of Earth, Environmental, and Planetary Sciences. I joined WashU just over 4 years ago, but like you, before I even set foot on campus, I knew Washington University was a special place. In the past 4 years, I've had abundant opportunities to directly observe how exceptional it is as an institution. Today is such a special day. I know you're all excited, and I am truly excited too. For months now, my colleagues and I have been eagerly awaiting and preparing for the arrival of the class of 2028, and they are finally here. The WashU community is filled with amazing people and opportunities, and now with you and your students joining our community, it will become even better. We have a rich and informative presentation for you today, so I'm going to keep my own remarks brief. I want to make 3 simple points. First is that WashU students are simply some of the best people in the world. I say this as someone who has been a member of multiple institutions across the United States and in fact across the globe. Our students are world-class academic caliber, of course, but they are also some of the most conscientious, caring, and passionate people. Every student I've met at WashU is the kind of person who truly gives you hope for the future. Second, we take great care of our students at WashU. I and all other university leaders do every single part of our jobs with their best interests in mind. I understand you are filled with many mixed emotions today. As a father who currently has 2 children in college, I can certainly appreciate that you are feeling intense pride, excitement, and maybe, just maybe, a little anxiety, especially if your student will be far from home. So I want to try to put your mind at ease. At WashU, we are always here for our students. Helping them thrive is a central part of our mission. In arts and sciences, they will study the fundamentals, of course, but they will also have plenty of opportunities to explore new ideas and new areas. Your students' academic experience will be broad and comprehensive, and they will also gain deep understanding of the fields that intrigue them. We will prepare your students to build fulfilling and successful lives, not only in the years ahead, but now here on our campus. That brings up my 3rd point. Your students' future is incredibly bright. Our alumni go on to do amazing things. They're scholars, medical doctors, entrepreneurs, teachers, business leaders, public servants, you name it, all over the world. There are even Nobel laureates and Pulitzer Prize winners who have garnered worldwide recognition. And they are also indispensable contributors who work tirelessly behind the scenes, making the world a better place. We look forward to your students joining their ranks one day. The years they will spend at WashU will inspire them, and they inspire us. So your students, the class of 2028, are in for a wonderful 4 years. We are so delighted to have them here, and we are thrilled to welcome you, their families and loved ones, to the WashU community. Thank you all so much for entrusting us with your students, and congratulations on this momentous occasion. With that, please allow me to introduce my colleague, Vice Dean Aaron McLaughlin, over there, who oversees our liberal arts curriculum and the Undergraduate College of Arts and Sciences. Dr. McLaughlin is a renowned Holocaust scholar. She's also deeply committed to undergraduate education and the success of our students. She will be a student's greatest champion during the time here, and I know she's so excited to meet all of you. Now, please join me in welcoming Vice Dean Aaron McLaughlin.
Good morning, everyone. As Dean Hu mentioned, I'm Aaron McLaughlin, and I lead the undergraduate area of Arts and Sciences, also known as the College of Arts and Sciences. I'm also a professor of German and Jewish studies, and I've been at WashU for more than 20 years. I think it's 23 years this year. I'm joined today by two of our staff leaders in the college, Dr. Robert Pempel, Associate Dean of Advising and Director of Student Academic Affairs, and I'm not sure where he is. I think he was greeting people outside. And Dr. Jennifer Romney, Associate Dean of Policy and Administration. So my absolute favorite time of year is the beginning of the fall semester, when the excitement on campus is palpable. We're all embarking on a new year with all the promise and anticipation that that brings. That sense of an open vista of possibilities is particularly true of our newest students, who have the whole WashU world open to them. I'm so excited to be able to greet them, to get to know them, and to support them on their academic journey. As I mentioned, I represent the college office, a dedicated team of advising and student academic affairs professionals whose mission is to support students and foster their success. We're here for you and your students. I know that you, as parents and families, are also incredibly excited about this moment, although perhaps your feelings of anticipation are mixed with worries and concerns. I'm here to acknowledge your feelings, but also to give you information to reassure you and tips you can use as you navigate this first year. After all, this is a big moment in your students' lives. They're about to embark on their 4-year academic adventure, which is an intense, exciting period in a young adult's life. It's a time of intellectual exploration, of awakening knowledge of oneself and the physical and social world one inhabits, and of personal transformation. In arts and sciences, we see this as an academic journey, a gradual process of development in which students come into their own and identify their passions, interests, and career goals. Tomorrow, I'll also talk to the first-year students about the idea of the academic journey and ask them to mark the occasion by writing postcards to their future selves. Naturally, when one starts a completely new endeavor, there is bound to be some degree of anxiety, both on the parts of students and on the part of you, their families. This is normal and to be expected, but I'd like to take you through the main kinds of anxiety that students and parents feel and give you some strategies for managing them. Over the next half hour or so, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. First, I'll talk about some common sources of anxiety for both students and parents in the transition to college, including choosing a major, overcommitment, grades, and then I'll talk about the productive role that families can play in student success. At the end, we'll also try to leave some time for your questions. So let's get started. So the first the first source of anxiety for both students and their families is choosing a major. Students often enter college with the idea that they must have already identified a single passion or academic objective, that one major path or plan of study that will define their lives and solidify their future. This notion of the singular passion, the sole, clearly defined thing that has to play out in a particular way for the student to be eternally happy, puts a lot of pressure on students, and often it closes them off to the many possibilities around them. We in the College of Arts and Sciences see this in another way. We see entrance into college as the beginning of a dynamic process, a journey that may have a definite destination, but also contains spontaneous side trips and serendipitous moments of discovery. And that also, like all serious endeavors, can contain occasional setbacks and moments of doubt. For this reason, we want to stress right off the bat that this is just the beginning. Students don't have to have it figured out all right now. In fact, nearly half of our undergraduate students enter WashU without knowing what they want to study. Many of those who don't know, comparing themselves with their new friends and roommates, might feel anxiety and embarrassment about this. But we actually encourage our students not to be too hasty in making decisions about their academic goals without trying things out and exploring subjects that they previously had no experience with. Arts and Sciences has a multitude of disciplines and courses that were simply not even available to students in their high schools. And in fact, there is plenty of time and space built into our curriculum for trying things out. Students don't actually need to declare a major until the second semester of their sophomore year. And even after that, they can still add some majors and minors. Further, all of our students will be required to engage with a true liberal arts and sciences curriculum. They'll be exposed to different ways of thinking, new perspectives, and academic areas that are unknown to them. And they'll develop skills and competencies essential for future careers, civic engagement, and personal well-being. The Arts and Sciences IQ curriculum encourages them to explore, especially in the first year. And at the same time, this exploration can satisfy various core requirements so that time and energy spent delving into new areas do not foreclose any possible paths. They are fully compatible with finishing on time and making the necessary preparations for particular careers or for graduate study. Moreover, students shouldn't stress out about their major anyway. As studies have consistently shown, an applicant's major isn't the main qualification that employers focus on. In fact, in the words of Norma Geyer, our Associate Vice Chancellor for Career Development and Education, quote, "For the most part, major doesn't equal career," end of quote. Rather than looking for students with particular majors, employers seek applicants with a broad range of skills and literacies in areas such as communication, critical thinking, data analysis, and ethical judgment. And as you can see from this graphic from a 2021 survey of 496 employers, the fluencies and skills students gain in a strong liberal arts and sciences education are highly desired by employers in a range of industries. Of course, particular content expertise or courses will be important for some paths. But in those paths too, such as the study of medicine, there is a great deal of focus on applicants who are well-rounded, who can think critically and ethically, and who can communicate adeptly, all of which are skills imparted by an arts and sciences education. We have a strong structure in place to help students identify possible interests, articulate a study plan, and think about how their studies will connect to their post-college life. In any case, students won't screw things up by choosing the wrong major. This is actually supported by the career outcomes of our graduates. If you're interested in the possible career paths of a particular major and the way in which WashU alums who graduated with that major have fared in the working world, I encourage you to review the career outcome data available on the website of the Center for Career Engagement. You can filter by school and department to see reported outcomes and destinations for WashU students. So students shouldn't avoid choosing a major because they're worried about their future career choice. We actually can help them make it work. And in fact, we want to get students thinking about future career paths right away. We encourage them to engage early and often with the WashU Center for Career Engagement and to explore possible careers through their exercises and workshops. In fact, we'll already start talking about this stuff in our arts and sciences orientation this week. Even those students who do have clear objectives, such as taking the pre-med path, can choose diverse majors in the humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences. They do not need to major in biology to get into med school. Successful pre-med students major in a variety of areas. And this is exemplified by our own student body. Every year we have about 350 WashU students apply to med school. Most of them are arts and sciences students. And we actually see no difference in admission rates between those who major in biology and those who major in other fields, such as anthropology, economics, chemistry, Spanish, classics, psychology, and history. And some of those fields actually have coursework in health-adjacent areas. And in fact, 25% of successful applicants have majors and minors outside of the natural sciences. So there are many paths to med school. Whatever path or paths students take, they can create a narrative for themselves, for their med school applications, that show how these varied studies contribute to their breadth and depth of knowledge important for the practice of medicine. And I'm saying this because a lot of our students enter wanting to take that pre-med path, and we want to stress that that pathway is really broad, and it encompasses all of arts and sciences. Okay, the second source of anxiety for students and families is overcommitment. WashU students often feel the need to max out their schedule in terms of both academics and extracurricular activities. They easily subscribe to the culture of busy and believe that there's something wrong if they're not overcommitted at all times. Our students developed this mindset and formed these habits when they prepared to apply for college. As all of you very well know, many of them felt the need to do more in order to win the college admissions race. But now they're here, they're at WashU, and they don't need to prove that same quantity of engagement. There's really no recipe for winning college, but we frequently see that students believe that they have to prove themselves in all possible areas. And they add things to their schedules merely for the sake of adding them to their schedules. If they love the activities they're doing, this is fine. But if they're doing this out of habit or because of external pressure, that's a problem. Especially in the first semester, they should slow down and focus on getting acclimated. They should avoid overcommitting themselves until they understand the academic expectations being made of them and they get used to the rhythm and routine of the semester. When they do add more activities or a heavy schedule of coursework, they should choose activities that are meaningful or that help them to develop skills. They should try to be intentional in their choices. So in this regard, quality and true interest should win out over quantity. So the third source of anxiety for parents and students is unexpected grades, which for many of our students, but not all of them, means grades other than A's. You know them, they're your students, you know this quite well. So adjustment to college courses can take a little time for first-year students. The expectations are different, the material is different, and the rhythm of the semester is different. But many first-year courses allow for that adjustment by having early exams that give feedback to students and by building in problem and discussion sections that help students digest the material. A large majority of our students was in the top 10% of their high school class. But WashU is a different playing field, and it takes some time for students to adjust their habits in order to work with different expectations and a different peer group. Some incoming students have learned to see grades, not the process of learning and developing knowledge and facility in particular areas, as the end-all, be-all goal of their studies, and in fact, of their whole life. But as we all know, we don't get grades in real life. And over the course of their 4 years here, we want to help our students shift their thinking from a high school mindset to a post-college mindset, where grades play a less overt role. And in fact, grades shouldn't be seen as goals in and of themselves. They're actually principally diagnostics that help a student know where they need to concentrate their attention and energy, and in what areas they may have particular aptitude or talent. So they should mostly be regarded as data points for helping students thoughtfully determine their paths. Excessive focus on grades is not only unhealthy, but it also can be detrimental to a student's academic development, because such a narrow concentration on grades as the only relevant academic indicator can close off rather than open up academic avenues for students and lock them into an unproductive mindset. Above all, and I cannot stress this enough, grades should not be seen as the expression of a student's value or potential. And if a student concentrates on grades as evidence of their intrinsic worth or the source of their identity, or the thing that will win them the approval of their parents or professors, they'll miss out on opportunities to grow their interests, to learn about themselves, and to develop resilience and coping strategies that will help them throughout their lives. Further, a rough exam or course grade, particularly in the first year, does not ruin a student's trajectory or their opportunities to achieve their career goals. Students often anxiously believe that they need absolutely perfect grades from beginning to end to have a successful postgraduate path. But that anxiety more often than not reflects a distorted understanding of what employers, graduate schools, and medical schools are looking for. In fact, as our pre-health advising team constantly stresses to our anxious pre-med students, grades are only one aspect of a student's successful application to med school, which should focus more holistically on the student's fuller academic, research, and clinical experience, and on the professional competencies and critical thinking skills they've acquired. And by the way, the advice of our pre-health advising team really pays off for arts and sciences students. In this past med school admission cycle, 2023-2024, 85.5% of first-time applicants who completed the Arts and Sciences Advising Program were accepted to med school, 85.5%. And the national average for applicants, on the other hand, for all applicants, not just for first-time applicants, is 42%. So we really have the formula, which is not only about grades, and I want to stress that again and again. But of course, most students are bound to get grades that they hoped would have been better. Learning to navigate this issue in productive ways is part of the learning curve of the college experience for both students and their families. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how students and families can respond to unexpected grades. There are actually unhelpful responses, and then there are helpful ones. So I'm going to start off with the unhelpful responses to unexpected grades. Let's take pictures of this one. So one unhelpful response is deciding that an unexpected grade automatically means that one is not good at the subject. In fact, most subjects ask students to learn new skills and grow abilities in particular areas. And this takes time and effort. We don't want students assuming that one disappointing grade or tough assignment is the final judgment on their abilities or potential, and then having them simply give up. Another unhelpful response is asking the student to study harder or longer. But in most cases, if a student has already been regularly studying for a particular course, increasing the time spent studying will probably not bring about a decisive change in their performance. Rather, students typically find that they need to rethink the way they study and to learn new study skills. A lot of our students, even our high-achieving students, do not have effective study habits when they enter WashU. They have been able to get away with being inefficient in high school, but they realize that they need to change those habits now. Being deliberate about study habits can be a game changer for students. By learning effective study habits, students can often either improve their performance or achieve the same performance with less time. We repeat this advice over and over again, so it's good when the advice comes not just from us, but from various sources, including you, their families. So those are the unhelpful responses, and then there are helpful responses to unexpected grades. First, it's important to remind students that learning is a process that takes time, and that progress isn't always immediate or linear. So they need time to be able to give themselves a little grace and opportunity to process the disappointment so that they can move forward in constructive ways. They need to sit a little bit with that and not immediately be in reactive mode. It actually helps to have that kind of moment of reflection. Second, it's important to ask students what they could do differently. They themselves might have some insight into why they're not performing as well as they would like. And partnering with them to think through the issue and come up with a workable and healthy game plan can be very helpful. And third, it's also important to encourage students to use the many resources that are available on campus. Some students think that availing themselves of academic resources somehow constitutes an admission of failure. But in fact, from the perspective of faculty and advisors, it demonstrates the student's determination, maturity, and ability to constructively address problems. So some of these campus resources include, for example, the instructor. Students often feel embarrassed coming to faculty. They feel that the instructor either won't want to help or that, again, this demonstrates some kind of weakness. But in fact, there is nothing a professor likes more than to see a struggling student come in for help. We don't judge our students who come to us for assistance. Rather, we want for them to do well. And we're impressed by students who take the initiative to learn better or who express real interest in the subject matter and want to improve their learning. And then there is the Learning Center, which can provide support for particular courses or just with general study skills. There's the Writing Center, which can help students navigate the different kinds of writing assignments required in various courses. And they can even help the most polished writer take their writing to the next level. Then there is our Disability Resources Office for students with learning disorders or ADHD, among other kinds of disability. Some students already received accommodations for learning disabilities in high school. If they did, they should go through our process again to receive those accommodations. This is not the time to change the game on this or to take particular strategies away from students. Some students deal with undiagnosed learning disabilities. It is not uncommon for students to get a diagnosis in their first or second year of college. And in fact, almost half of students with accommodations get their diagnoses after high school. So if students or families suspect that there is a persistent issue, they should definitely consult with disability resources. Then there are advisors. As many of you already know, WashU places a strong emphasis on academic advising and has put into place an entire matrix of advisors, which means that each student has a network of people who can help them with both academic and personal matters. The core of our comprehensive advising program is the four-year advisor, who is assigned to the student in the summer before they matriculate. Your students have already interacted with their four-year advisors over the summer, and they'll be meeting again tomorrow and several times during their first year. As the advising title indicates, these advisors accompany the students throughout their college career, and after those several meetings in the first year, they meet with them a minimum of once a semester in all subsequent years, because they're there to ensure academic continuity over the 4 years. Then there are departmental advisors. When students declare a major or a minor, they add a specialist advisor from these programs. These advisors, most of whom are faculty, help with discipline-specific courses and the ins and outs of particular majors and minors. We also have a robust postgraduate advising structure. So if students are interested in a pre-professional, pre-law, pre-grad, or pre-health path, they receive advisors in those areas as well. Further, there are study abroad advisors. So students planning on engaging in an international experience are advised by staff in our Overseas Programs Office, who advise on the logistics of study abroad, and by study abroad advisors within particular majors and minors who can help make sure study abroad works with students' study plans. And then we have faculty who not only serve as major and minor advisors, but also as mentors, both formally with research projects or advice on postgraduate study, and informally. Outside of the College of Arts and Sciences, there are student affairs professionals who support residential life, campus life, student health, career development, and other areas. And you've probably already met some and heard about some of those advisors already today. And finally, there are also peer advisors available, including residence advisors in the residential halls, WUSAs, the kids in the red t-shirts running around, and peer mentors for particular subjects. So really, students can rely on an entire campus network that is in place to help them negotiate any academic or personal challenges they face. In addition to the extended network of support available to students here at WashU, we recognize that families also play an important role in ensuring the well-being and success of their students. The support of families is critical for the development of students, and we find it very important to partner with families. After all, we have a common interest in helping our students flourish. But the key to this partnership is the role of the student in this venture. For us, the student is the primary agent in the relationship. It is critical that the student be in the driver's seat of their own educational experience and that they own and take responsibility for their academic path. Their embracing of their agency is essential for their potential to flourish both in their studies and in their future lives. So we think students are best supported both by WashU faculty and staff and their parents. However, we don't circumvent the student to work directly with families. We honor the student's agency in their own educational path and make sure that their desires and needs are at the center of our focus. Parents are understandably concerned about their students and want to be involved, but this requires that parents work with the student, not for them. And this is where we want to avoid the phenomenon of helicoptering and over-involvement in the students' academic and social lives. We want students to become independent and responsible and to emerge from their 4 years here as capable adults who are able to fully and confidently function in society. This means that they'll need to learn to navigate challenges for themselves. Of course, we'll support them in this, but ultimately the student needs to be the one shaping their destiny and owning their educational experience. So when I use the term helicoptering, you may be thinking of helicopters constantly circling the Danforth campus like they do over at the WashU Med School across the park. And in fact, after I gave this presentation to families of first-year students a couple of years ago, a parent got a kick out of the image of a helicopter hovering over campus and made and sent me this cute picture. Although I'm not quite sure what to make of the fact that it's a military helicopter. Yeah, in any case, it embodies what we're trying to do here. But actually, what I mean by helicoptering is a certain style of parenting in which the parents insert themselves into the lives of their emerging adult children to a degree that may hinder the development of coping skills. In the research on the experience of college-age adults, helicoptering is considered to be uniformly counterproductive. So even though parents who engage in helicoptering are often supportive and well-intentioned, students who are helicoptered, who have their problems solved by their parents and who themselves do not exert agency or control, have increased levels of depression, increased levels of anxiety, decreased satisfaction with life, decreased physical health, and decreased academic performance. These negative effects occur even though the parental intention is clearly to support rather than harm the student. And I want to stress here that in almost all cases that we see helicoptering, the parents fervently wish to help, not hurt their student. So we almost always assume good intentions, even with such negative outcomes. Of course, it's important for families to support their students and to be involved in their lives. Such connection is actually critical for student success. So how do we know when that positive intention to support veers into the negative area of helicopter parenting? The key is to make the distinction between behaviors and actions that support the autonomy of students and those that indicate over-involvement in or control of students' lives. So what actually constitutes helicoptering and what constitutes autonomy supportive behavior? According to research surveys that determine the phenomenon of helicoptering with college-age students, there is a difference between parental interaction that supports the autonomy and agency of students and interaction that is overly involved and inappropriate. So I've taken examples of both kinds of interaction from the research surveys, and I've created a little quiz for you. So I'm going to read through a list of possible parent behaviors, and let's see whether you can identify which is autonomy supportive and which is helicoptering. Okay, so we ready for the quiz? Everybody's going to get an A. We just know it. Okay. Number one, so parents who want to have a say in which major the student chooses. 2, parents who call the professors about low grades or assignments. 3, parents who want the students to call or text to let them know where they are. 4, parents who encourage the student to make their own decisions and to take responsibility for the choices they've made. 5, parents who monitor whom the student spends time with. 6, parents who encourage the student to keep a budget and manage their own finances. And 7, parents who intervene in a problem with a roommate. Oh wait, and there's one more. 8, parents who encourage the student to communicate with professors. So, okay, let's see how you did. Which of these behaviors are helicoptering and which are autonomy supportive? So all of the helicoptering behaviors, number 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7, are italicized, while the autonomy supportive ones, numbers 4, 6, and 8, are bolded. You'll notice that the items that are bolded are all about encouraging students. Those behaviors support the student's agency and allow them to solve challenges independently, even if the parent is giving advice, reassurance, and moral support. And those are all things we want parents to give our students. According to the research, such autonomy-supportive parenting behavior is correlated with far better outcomes. We are trying to empower and enable students to advocate for themselves. It takes time, and it isn't always clear-cut, but students do learn to make decisions and deal with the consequences of making those decisions. And this is really necessary for them to be fully engaged in their education. At the same time, however, we're not advocating for a kind of sink or swim situation. In fact, as evident in the advising matrix I introduced a few moments ago, we've developed a large team of supportive partners throughout campus. We believe in providing students with a great deal of advice, information, and connections, and helping them to develop their skills so that they can flourish. Our approach to advising involves supporting the students' autonomy and enabling them to make constructive, informed decisions. We really do encourage them to step up and own their education. But just to be clear, though, by saying that we want to avoid helicoptering, I'm not saying that we don't want to hear from parents. In fact, there are appropriate times for parents to make contact with us. So, under what circumstances should a family member be involved, and when should they make contact with us? First, sometimes it will be useful for us to hear from you if your student is stressed or struggling and you don't know what to do to help, or whom they should talk to, or if you wonder whether what your student is going through is normal. Second, we generally don't advise that parents bypass students to talk to us, except when there is something going on in a student's life that they probably aren't going to tell us about, a family situation, health challenges, or other personal issues. In such instances, you might want to give us the heads up so that we can check in with the student a bit more frequently. Third, we support students advocating for themselves. But if they have attempted to advocate for themselves through conventional channels, through their advisors or faculty members, about a concern, and it's not going anywhere, and they won't reach out to us themselves, then you might want to consult with us. I should stress that it's always preferable for students to talk with us directly. So please encourage them to reach out to us. But if a student won't do so, then we can strategize together about how to help the student move forward. So those are ways in which a parent can be involved. Conversely, under what circumstances should a family member not be involved? Well, there are definitely less appropriate or productive reasons to call us. First, a parent should not contact us when it's a question of information or academic policy. For example, how many credits will transfer from a summer program, or when the deadlines to add a drop a course are. With such matters, we advise parents to encourage their student to take the lead. They need to learn how to handle these things and to find out information and policies for themselves. That's part of being an agent in their own education. And by the way, all this stuff is on our website anyway. They can use their Google skills. They're good at that, right? Hopefully. Second, a parent shouldn't ask us to tell students what they need to do with regard to their academic plans or their coursework. When we get these kinds of requests from parents, and that happens every once in a while, the parents often don't want the student to know that they reached out to us, which is a little weird. It puts us in a dynamic, and it puts us in a bind, because if we're supposed to check in with the student without acknowledging that we've spoken to their families and that we know that there's an issue, it really just doesn't work. Third, a parent shouldn't reach out to us for information that a student won't give them. This is where we are legally required to adhere to the regulations of the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA. And you've probably heard FERPA floating around the last couple days. You'll hear it for the next 4 years. And FERPA stipulates that anything about a student's academic performance is private to them. We can't talk to students about the student's academic record or other information without the student's explicit consent to give that particular information, unless there's a significant issue, for example, when a student's status is in jeopardy. So otherwise, we encourage you to speak with your student, or we can talk to the student with you. In general, we expect that students will take the initiative to disclose and discuss academic goals and progress with their parents. Fourth, and this is kind of funny, but a parent sometimes contacts us to make sure a child wakes up or gets to class on time. This also isn't appropriate for the college, as our purview is strictly the academic side of the students' college experiences. So we don't keep tabs on our students outside of class. The staff of residential life can be helpful with your questions about how your student is functioning outside the academic arena. But you should know that they're also not going to make sure your student wakes up on time or gets to class. So that's your student's responsibility. So I'd like to conclude my presentation here by turning from your communications with us to your students' communications with you. One thing you might want to be on the lookout for in the next weeks and months as your student starts to navigate the unknown waters of the new semester is the occasional text or phone call in which the student is panicking or venting about a particular situation. The issue could be a difficult assignment, an unexpected grade, the student's workload, an upcoming test, problems with a roommate, or even just a little homesickness. So I'd like to prepare you to be prepared for this panicky phone call, which typically sets off a kind of inevitable chain reaction that plays out in a fairly predictable sequence. So let me walk you through what happens. First, a bad thing of unknown magnitude happens. Second, the student becomes distressed. Third, the student calls and texts you about their distress, which inevitably upsets or worries you. Fourth, a few minutes after calling or texting, the student goes for late-night pizza with a sweet mate, and everything's fine. They've gotten over the issue and they're feeling better. Fifth, the student comes back to their dorm, works on their paper, watches Netflix, and goes into a deep sleep. And sixth, you become distressed and you lie awake half the night, imagining your child still in despair while your student sleeps peacefully, blissfully unaware of your suffering. We've all been there, haven't we? This scenario shows that students don't always close the loop on their own calls of distress. And we want them to learn that they need to be mindful of what they ask of their families. There are also limits to what that you can give them and what they can ask from you. We want them to be responsible and considerate in their dealings with you. So tomorrow, I'm going to lay out this very scenario to them and remind them that they need to reach out to you again when they feel better, that they cannot leave you hanging. It's cruel. This is the way that we see partnering with you. This is our way of supporting you in your support of your students. So this is our common endeavor together. Okay, so I'm going to finish here and open up for questions now. But before I do, I wanted to give you my contact information so that you can contact me anytime for appropriate reasons, of course. So my email is vicedeenmclaughlin@worcester.edu. My phone number is 315-935-7747. Or for general questions, you can just send an email to college@worcester.edu. That's an email that's constantly monitored. It actually is seen by a real person, not AI, so you will get a response. Okay, thank you for listening and partnering with us to optimize the success of your students. We're really glad that they've joined our academic community, and we really look forward to a great first semester for them. So thank you very much. And I'm sure we have questions, so we have a roving microphone. We also, as I said, I'm joined by my colleagues, Associate Dean Robert Pample and Associate Dean Jennifer Romney. So if I can't answer a question, they definitely can answer the questions. We've got a question in the back.
Hi, thank you very much. I had a quick question about the FERPA form, and maybe this applies to many people. So my student already signed a consent that I got from an online resource, and it lays out what they can disclose, so it meets the requirements. Do they need to fill out separately WashU's specific form?
Yes.
And the same question for HIPAA consent. Must it be WashU's form?
So I unfortunately cannot answer the HIPAA. That is not an academic, but there are people in student affairs that can definitely help you with that. With FERPA, we actually do not have a blanket FERPA consent at WashU. For every interaction that you need to have with us about a particular issue, you need to fill out a form. That form is available at our registrar, university registrar website. But you would need to, if you, for example, want to speak to one of the four-year advisor about a student's academic process, you would need to fill out that form and say exactly what you're interested in speaking about. And then the student gives their permission for that to happen. So we don't have a kind of a blanket FERPA release.
Hello. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation, and especially that last slide about the scenario. We loved it. Question is, could you speak a little bit about WashU's partnership, or specifically undergrads, colleges' partnership with the WashU Medical School, about internship opportunities, research opportunities, and how should the student navigate about going this?
Yes, so we have this wonderful resource on the other side of the park called the WashU Medical School and the Barnes Jewish Hospital in general. It's a huge enterprise. And what is lovely is the research going on there is very dynamic, and the researchers are interested in involving undergraduates in their research, also in clinical opportunities. So we have robust programs of research and clinical experience. So it depends on what a student is interested in. A student should probably, their first stop should be our Office of Undergraduate Research, which can help students strategize about what kind of opportunity they're interested in, how to contact a faculty member. Are there programs, and the med school has a lot of programs to mentor undergraduate students. Are they eligible for programs? They can also speak to some of the faculty members that they're taking courses with that have connections to the research going on there. If a student joins our pre-health advising program, which they generally do that in the second year, then they will find out about additional opportunities for research and clinical work as well. So that we kind of have our two major portals, our Office of Undergraduate Research and our Pre-Health Advising Program. And they're going to hear from both of those areas this week in our orientation.
Thank you, Irene, for the presentation. Very nice. My question is on the grades. I know you had mentioned don't focus on the grades, but I also know you would have graduation requirements for the student to be able to graduate. And as they go along, how are they being guided in terms of being able to see that they are on track to still keep that going and understand it really from the beginning?
Yes. We, as you know, college curricula are quite complex, especially when you add majors, second majors, minors. I mean, our students are doing as many things as they can do. So this is where the four-year advisor really comes in. The four-year advisor is there to make sure that the student is registering for the correct number and kinds of courses to satisfy their general requirements, that they are doing their prerequisites for their majors. They give a light look at what they're doing in their majors and then send them to their major advisors to make sure that everything is exactly in place. The students also have online tools as part of our system that helps them plan out their 4 years to take different pathways. And in fact, the person who can speak most about this is our Associate Dean, Jennifer Romney, who heads our graduation certification team. So every year in May, she locks herself in a room for many days to make sure that everything is kosher for students to graduate. Do you want to add anything to this?
Yes, only that we do have online tools. We do have four-year, it is part of my job as a four-year advisor to sort of prod students in certain directions if they seem to be missing something big. But honestly, I don't worry about that with my students the first year. At that point, it's more of a question of course selection, that we want some variety and different kinds of assessments and different kinds of approaches that they're learning. I always tell my students that it's my job to tell them when it's time if they need to worry about meeting a particular requirement. But their first year, I just want them to get going and to the phrase learn what they love, right, and make that kind of discovery. And then as we get going into the thinking about courses for the sophomore year, then we really begin to sort of take stock and assessment. And, maybe you need to concentrate a little bit over here, a little bit over there, and it's good. They also have a data point in WebStack, which is the student access web portal that's called Graduation Checkout Sheet, so they can check at that's pretty clear, right? Graduation checkout sheet. So they can check that at any point. The one thing I will say is that it's dynamic based on earned units. So if they go and look at it now, it's going to be a bunch of zeros, and that's going to be perhaps alarming. So maybe waiting until they get some courses actually on the books, right? So after winter break would be a great time to look at the graduation checkout for the first time.
So speaking with the advisor, my student took a few more 300 level classes than I'm comfortable with.
Can you repeat that? 300 level classes?
Than I am comfortable with, but I left it alone. That conversation that the student had with the advisor, was the advisor like 2 thumbs up, go ahead, or is there a little maybe you want to?
So, our numbering system isn't always super reliable because there are specific 300 level courses. I teach one myself that are specifically open to first-year students in different disciplines. So the fact that it's a 300 level course in and of itself doesn't mean that it's inappropriate for the student. Now, I also would probably ask the student to kind of look at the syllabi, to maybe even contact the professor and ask about. I had a student actually with this issue this summer. He wanted to to enroll in a number of 300-level courses, and he contacted the professor to ask what exactly what are the expectations. And in the end, he decided, okay, this isn't for me. So if you feel like your student right now, he's kind of got like high ambitions, and maybe he's pitched it a little too high, likely his four-year advisor has already given that advice to him. What I would say is we have this add drop period in the first almost 2 weeks. It's the Thursday night at 9 o'clock of the second week of courses, a student's schedule has to be set. So really those first couple of days in class are really to look at the syllabus, see what the expectations are, and then reassess and decide, is there another course the student can join? And we have a number of first-year seminars that are still open. So if a student, if they've decided, that course, I'm not sure, it's got more writing than I feel comfortable with, or I don't know anything about this discipline, they can drop that course and then enter another course. And what they should do is contact their four-year advisor just to make sure that plan that they have is good. Does that make sense?
Hi. So this might be a advice about like helicoptering or not. My student didn't do well on this course sign-up lottery and only has 2 confirmed courses, and it was waitlisted for everything else. And we both separately have a lot of anxiety about it that I'm trying to hold back on. Is there advice that you can give me basically to stop being anxious and it'll figure itself out? Or like tell me about the process or ways that I can encourage my student to help resolve this?
So I would say I feel your anxiety. It's like I felt this last week when I was stuck in an airport about a hurricane was about to hit, and I was on the standby list, and like that, that am I going to make it out? Is she going to make it in? Is your question? I think it's legitimate for you to encourage the student to have. All of our students are going to meet in groups with their four-year advisors tomorrow. I encourage your student to once again connect with the four-year advisor or connect with somebody. We have drop-in advising in the college every day just to make sure that to have an alternate plan. There should be an alternate plan in place in case the student doesn't get, if the student is number 20 in a wait list, it's very unlikely the student will get in the course. If the student is number 1 or 2, 3, it is likely. So, but the student should have a sense of what will they do if they don't make it into those courses. That first semester can be stressful, but I should say for those of you who had students who had the registration period right at the very end of registration and they had to be waitlisted for courses, they're right at the very beginning of the next registration period. So they'll have their choice, the choices will be better for them.
Someone in the back, I'm on my way.
Hi. So it's been a while since I've been in college, but I'm just curious about, I remember sometimes now and again taking a class, starting a class, and then deciding at a certain point to make it like pass-fail. So I'm curious about like how that works here. I assume that those are not things that you would do for like courses that are very important for your major, but like what's the role of pass-fail in courses here at WashU?
That's a great question. So pass-fail is a really great option for a lot of students in particular situations. You are allowed to choose one course to be pass-fail per semester unless there is a course that has only the pass-fail option. So they are allowed to choose one course per semester that has a great option as pass-fail. They can choose up until this year, it's October 6th week of the semester. So beginning to mid-October, they can choose to designate the course pass-fail. And so if a student is feeling like, oh, I don't know about this, there's too much workload, or I just don't feel right about the course, they can take that, designate that course pass-fail. Then, if they get their midterm back and they're unexpectedly doing really well, they have until 12th week, November, the 12th week, to change it back to a grade. But you can't do it the other way around. You can't you don't have until November to designate to pass-fail. It's a really weird policy. So you have until October to decide pass-fail. I would encourage you to encourage your student, if they're struggling in a class, to just go ahead and take that pass-fail then. And then if they do better, they can change it back toward the end of the semester.
I have only one kid. I'm kind of, definitely more anxious on that. Just want to know how much of visiting is too much.
I think you see this with students either, I think there are some students who really, they just get here and they're just like, bye-bye, mom, bye-bye, dad. They just don't want to hear from their parents. But sometimes, actually, I think that they want to feel that support is there. So I do think checking in on the parent's part a little more than the student maybe is asking for is not a bad thing. Because I feel like students, there is this pressure to suddenly adult, and they feel that they have to have figured it all out. And sometimes they may not want to articulate that they need you, but they do. So I think you kind of have to let the student set the tone for it, but at the same time showing that support. I do think what I hear, students love the care packages that you send, the cookies or the cookie bouquets or whatever it is that you do, those little things that show that you're thinking about them without being up in their business. I think that has been really helpful for the students.
And in the fall semester, there are sort of breaks along the way, right? We have fall break, which, depending on how close you live, they may or may not travel back for that. We have Parent and Family Weekend, which you all are, of course, invited to come and attend. Then we have the Thanksgiving break in November, and then winter break. So there are a bunch of touch points that are sort of natural moments for those visits to happen.
Yeah. That's right. And students typically tend to want to reconnect with their families during those, at least in that first year. By the time they're seniors, they want to, they have plans over fall break. They are going to Costa Rica or something. But in that first year, I think that they also want to reconnect with you.
I'd just like to say to the parent who just spoke, I have 2 kids, but I actually feel exactly the same way as she does. So. My question is about competition. Correct me if my stats are wrong, but I think you said there's about 1,800 students per grade and about 350 applied to med school, so it's about 20%. For the kids who are in a pre-med, for example, program, what does the school foster as far as for those students of collegiality versus competition, if you can speak about that, because that's a large percentage?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, the one thing I would say that I've always said about our undergraduate experience here, and students will say it to me as well, is that we have, or they have, it's not only us, they've created a collaborative atmosphere amongst themselves. We are known for not having that kind of cutthroat competition. It's just the ethos. It's the air. Maybe it's the Midwest. I don't know. It's the the water we drink, the air we breathe. But we also have supports in place to encourage that. One, for example, is our peer mentoring program, peer-led team learning, which happens in such disciplines as chemistry. And chemistry is kind of that one first course that our pre-health students take that is really, anxiety-producing and stressful. And the chemistry team, which is like out of this world in terms of their pedagogical, the thought they put into their pedagogy of their courses, they've designed these really great peer-led team learning cohorts that encourage groups that require students to work together to solve problem sets, to come up with, to do some project-based work. And so it really encourages that kind of a collaborative spirit. I think what I see more than anything is students being in competition with themselves, with their own ideal, their own self-ideal of how well they think they should be doing. And again, with the sense that they need to be perfect, that kind of perfectionist mindset. I see that more than cutthroat elbowing. We don't see that really at all. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or either of you.
I would think the other thing, the PLTL, peer-led team learning, is really important. They do it in a lot of different STEM courses in particular, but the fact that it's tied to Gen Chem, Gen Chem 1, the very first STEM course that they take, it sets the tone, right? And they think it's, quote, normal, and therefore it becomes normal because it's their first encounter. The other thing I think is really important is that our general chemistry course is not graded on a curve. It's graded on a mastery level. So if everybody, is in the highest range of points that they accumulate through their exams and their quizzes and that kind of thing, everybody gets an A, right? They're not in competition with each other.
Yeah.
And I think going to mastery level versus curve is also fundamental to, they are not in competition with each other. They are engaged with the material instead.
Yeah, that's the same in our calculus courses. It's been a shift, and it really has made a difference in terms of students feeling like they can work together to learn, because they can all be successful. A student doesn't have to edge out another student to get the higher grade.
And the thing that I'll add on the advising side, just to double down on the level of support that we provide, is that our pre-health advising team does such wonderful work in laying out the landscape for students in a way that's honest, but also invites deep reflection on why they're doing it. And so there's no sense in which the pre-health team is trying to keep out students or make that a competitive process. It's incredibly collaborative. It's designed to bring the student into a reflective posture that will serve them well when they actually apply to medical school. So I think from beginning to end, the emphasis is on developing the student, helping them to identify what their true interests and passions are, and then to help them realize those. So the stat that Vice Dean McLaughlin shared earlier is a reflection of that, but we support all students. It's not like a stat that's pulled, and we could say 100% of the students who come to all meetings and score X on the MCAT are going to get in. This is a really successful process because we're open to all, and it's not competitive from the kind of gatekeeping either, which I think is important.
Hi. My son came here when he visited here last year, and we learned the WashU is opening up like a whole neuroscience building, and we were just so impressed. I'm wondering how that neuroscience building, is it like how our department, is it collaborating? Are we going to, can you share some of the visions, or, are we going to bring like the professors or researchers, how that's going to work? I heard it's open already, is it?
Yeah, and I mean, we already have really strong collaboration between particular departments in arts and sciences, biology, psychology, for example, with the neuroscience on that side of the campus. So we have faculty who have joint appointments, so we already have that bringing the med school side over. We do anticipate as they grow, we will see more interaction here. But we have our philosophy, neuroscience, psychology program, which is an important, very interdisciplinary arts and sciences major that is very neuroscience focused, but we also have a neuroscience track in biology. So we have this joint unit called the Division of Biology and Biomedical Sciences, which crosses the Danforth campus and the Med campus. So it's shared faculty, shared research, shared opportunities.
I think we have time for one more question, if we have one more question. Otherwise, we can leave it here. Anyone? Oh, okay. We've got the last question.
I don't have a question, but I have a story, and that is that yesterday, this is regarding leaving our kids here. that I was trying to figure out how to do something to my child's bag after I took all the clothes out of it, and you can invert it and make it into a small bag, and instead of asking anybody, I looked up on YouTube and looked up the YouTube video and did it, and my son looked at me and he put his hands on my shoulders and he says, "Dad, I'm so proud of you. You're going to be okay."
Wise words, indeed. Yes. Thank you all. I hope to see you over Parent and Family Weekend, and reach out if we can do anything for you. Have a good rest of your time on campus.